great to be together again. And for our AGM. Well, for those of you thinking, AGM again? Yes, it is our AGM again. This is not the movie Groundhog Day, and it's not an April Fool's joke because it's not April. Our AGM is here again. Thanks in part to COVID. Our last AGM was put off till May 2nd. And so here we are after around 7 months. But you can think of yourself, this is what I was pondering. You can think of yourself as special. You are special. You get to be part of 2 annual general meetings in 2021. Today we have a full agenda. We're going to make sure that you have opportunity for questions. We're going to make sure that you have lots of different opportunities to hear all sorts of good and wonderful things. Before I start, why don't we just take a moment to pray? God, we thank you for today. I thank you for our AGM, our annual general meeting. I thank you for the good work that has gone into the past to prepare the ground for us to do ministry on. And I thank you for the future. I thank you for all the work that's gone into the planning and preparation. And I thank you for this church. Would you continue to call us forward, give us vision, help us with planning, and be with our time today, that it would be fruitful. In Jesus' name, everyone said. Well, again, I want to thank you for being here. And I want to thank you for making the Evangel AGM a priority today. And thank you to those of you who are online. I hope you feel relaxed at home. You get to put your feet up a little bit and follow along. As always, during our AGM, we'll have the chance to hear a financial report from our board treasurer. We'll review the upcoming budget and field any questions as we continue to move along in faith as a church. And just right off the top, let me just give a special thanks to those who have worked so hard and diligently preparing with me for this year's report. We would be dead in the water, and I underscore this, without the hard work of Mark Faubert and Trevor Tremblay. So can we give them a clap this morning? They have been instrumental. They're right here. They have been instrumental with me in getting a clear information, being my first year, and working to prepare and present our report today. Together with our church board, you should be immensely proud of the work they have been doing on your behalf. I believe wholeheartedly in the ministry budget being proposed today, and I feel it accurately reflects the priorities of Evangel moving ahead. And today is also a celebration of the past, what we have been able to see and accomplish with God's help. And I want to acknowledge that Pastor Will Sanchin, together with Pastor Urf Cordes, have left us incredibly secure path for the future. Oh, thanks, Mike. They've left us this incredibly secure path for the future. They've managed our budgets with wisdom and integrity, I believe, giving us a sure footing as we continue to march forward. In our budget prep, I believe we struck a balance between a faith mixed with conservatism. There we go. And I believe that this year our church will grow in influence, grow in depth, and grow in numbers. Today we're going to see some new board members, Lord willing, join our team. But I just want to give you a little bit of advanced notice. We're not going to have any paper ballots today. We're going to save a few trees as we have new board members join our team. We don't have any paper ballots, but I feel that we can handle all the business before us today by voting with a show of hands. I just want to give you advanced notice of that. Okay, well, it looks like we have numbers that have come in. And if you just give me a moment. Okay. I need a few accountants to work out the numbers here. I'm going to just pass this to you. I think we have a quorum. Let's double check. Yeah. Good. Okay, here we are. I'm going to call us to order this afternoon. I want to call our meeting to order. But in order to do this, we have to have a quorum. And we have a quorum. Praise God. Let's review our roster report. And I'll read it for you, and then I will make a motion. As of today, Evangel Church has 412 voting members eligible to vote. We need 30% for a quorum. Therefore, we need a minimum of 124 voting members to continue. Today, we have 165 members participating. It's good. This gives us our quorum. So here's the breakdown. We have 8 members registered in advance. We have 31 members are with us online. Hello. And we have 126 members are with us in person. That gives us a total of 165 participating members. Therefore, I'd like to make a motion to accept this roster report. Do I have a mover? Mover, seconder. All those in favor? Motion carried. Great job. We're off to a good start. The next order of business will be to appoint a recording secretary. So I would like to make a motion to appoint Allison Scuffy, our board secretary, as the recording secretary today. I'm looking for a mover on this. I'm looking for a seconder. All those in favor? There we have it. Motion carried. You made it. The next agenda item is the reading of the last AGM minutes. Now, a copy of the minutes has been provided on page 6 of this AGM report. You'll see the blue copy. I would like to suggest to you today that we forego the reading of the minutes and move to accept the minutes as presented. And I hope you've had a chance to look at them and review the documents. I know I have. If there are any questions or concerns from our last AGM, we will open the floor for any questions. If not, I will move to make a motion. Question? Move. Okay. Okay, no questions that I can see, and I'm looking around. Concerning our last minutes from the AGM, so I'll make a motion. Can I have a mover to accept the minutes from the last AGM as presented? There we go. We have a mover, a seconder. There we go. All those in favor? Motion carried. Do you feel better about that? Allison said to me, she said, so if we have to read every minute from our last meeting. So thank you. Okay, item 4 on our agenda, and it looks like we're actually officially over halfway through our board meeting already, so pat yourself on the back. We have item 4, which is the election of board members. So let me explain a little bit how this is going to work today. Today we have 4 candidates who have agreed to let their names stand, and we have 4 board positions available. The 4 candidates are, and you'll see this in this document here. This was circulated online, and I believe we have copies here. The 4 candidates are Rolly Facette, who has currently served 1 term and let his name stand again. Thank you, Rolly. Number 2, we have Curtis Gunn, who has also currently served 1 term and has let his name stand again. Thank you, Curtis. And we have 2 new additions. Number 1, we have Mark Benson, who is a new candidate and who has been part of Evangel Church for 13 years. And you'll see his bio in your booklet. We also have Suzette Byfield, who recently served on our discernment team, and I'm grateful for, and who has been a part of Evangel Church for 8 years. We have circulated this brief bio on each of the candidates for the last several weeks, and I think personally they are all fantastic candidates. We're fortunate to have them willing to serve with us for the next term. Mark Benson and Suzette Byfield will be filling the positions vacated by Trevor Tremblay. We love you. Who has served for 2 consecutive terms, and Rob Baskin, who has served faithfully but is stepping down 1 year early from his term. And I just want to personally thank these outgoing board members sincerely for their dedicated service, and I look forward to continuing in relationship with them as vital parts of our church. So, just before we move on, I did point out Trevor Tremblay there, but I want to say a few more words about Trevor. Some of you know, some of you don't, but I want to pause and recognize, I think there's honor that's due here, Trevor. Trevor, can you stand up?
I am standing.
No. You got to stand up. We got to see your shining face, your smile. Thank you. Some of you know, some of you don't, but Trevor has worked incredibly hard for our church this year. He's spent countless, and I mean countless hours chairing the discernment team and preparing documents as board treasurer. This, as you can understand, has been an enormous task, and it's worth recognizing. So thank you. Give him an air high five on the way out. So thank you, Trevor, for all your work. So, in part, and due to the fact that we have 4 candidates for 4 board positions this year, there's no need for an election. Rather, these candidates will be appointed by acclamation, meaning a simple yes or no. And this is how it's going to work. Yes is a hand up. No is no hand at all. Clear? Yes is a hand up. No is no hand at all. Now, I'm going to present a motion to ratify this acclamation, but before we do, I'd like to open the floor to any questions about this, about the candidates or about the process. The floor is open. Just give another minute. Okay. Well, this means I want to present a motion for you today to ratify the appointment of Rolly Facette, Curtis Gunn, Mark Benson, and 4th Suzette Byfield to the Evangel Church Board for the time frame of 1 term. All those in favor, please raise your hand. I'm looking for a majority. We have a majority. Looks like we have a clear majority, and so to confirm this officially, can we have a mover to accept the majority motion in the room to appoint by acclamation today the listed 4 board members? Can I have a mover? Mover, a seconder, seconder. All those in favor? Motion carried. Congratulations, guys. Congratulations to Mark, Suzette, Rolly, and Curtis. Honestly, I'm looking forward to continuing with our board. We have a fantastic board, and this will make it stronger, so thank you. Okay, at this point, I would like to hand it off to Trevor Tremblay, our board treasurer, and Mark Faubert, our church administrator, to give us the financial report. Take it away.
Well, good afternoon now. It is 12:01. So it's our pleasure to be here today to share with you the financial results of Evangel. I hope for those of you that watched Mark's promotional video that we didn't overpromise and underdeliver today. So we'll see how this goes, right, Mark?
That's right.
And we do have to apologize. There are 2 accountants sitting at this table. You're debit, I'm credit, or am I debit? Anyway, we're not sure. But we'll do our best to share this information in an easy to understand presentation. And obviously we'll be opening it up towards the end of the presentation for questions from the floor. All of this material that we're going to be presenting today is in the hard copy of the annual report. But we'll do our best to condense some of this presentation material for you. So we're going to start off with the first slide, which is the comparison of the 2021 revenue and expenses to the prior year. So this is a summary of year-over-year changes, and it's really a great news story of how substantial giving towards debt reduction took place towards the end of the calendar year of 2020. The main figure here that I'm going to zero in on is the net surplus shown at the bottom under the August 31st, 2021 column. The net surplus there is $640,000, and it really represents the $643,000 surplus from the capital and debt fund, which we'll talk a little bit later on in the presentation, which was partially offset by a $3,000 operating deficit from the regular operating fund in the same period. We'll be presenting some more detail on the breakdown of these results a little bit later on. But for now, this presentation that you see here is really a result of what we call the accountant's view of the presentation of results. But we're going to talk a little bit more going into the underlying changes in cash position, because it does provide a bit of a different story as well. But this revenue and expense presentation is as required under the accounting principles that we must follow. So to give you a little bit more information, let's take a look at cash flows for the presentation. So when we began the fiscal year, which starts in September 1 of 2020, we had a net balance owing, or in other words, a drawn down line of credit, totaling $254,000. Now you add to this the total net surplus from that previous slide of $640,000, less the capital purchases that were made throughout the year and changes in working capital, and we arrive at a positive cash balance for the first time in a very long time of $375,000 at the year ending August 31st. Now that's awesome, and we talk a bit about and shared with the congregation throughout the year when that took place with a significant capital reduction or debt reduction contribution. But it should be noted that while we enjoy the positive cash balance in our bank accounts, it does not reflect really the cash flow impact of other expected cash inflows and outflows that need to happen over a period of time. In other words, we have other obligations that will require an outlay of cash, and that's presented in the financial statements as well. So more specifically, that includes things like what we have referred to in our financial statements as restricted funds payable. So restricted funds payable, which is itemized on page 24 of the annual report if you do want to look later on, but I'll highlight the lion's share of these items represent $186,000 of missions giving that is restricted and will be designated to be dispersed as those projects unfold, but also $307,000 for Syrian sponsorship funds that will also be distributed over time. So these unspent commitments result in the positive cash balance that you see for the time being. So that's really great. I mean, it helps reduce our interest costs, and that's shown in the financial results a little bit later on. So while we do enjoy having the positive cash balance, we do want to make sure that it's clear that there are other commitments that will take place over the coming years, and so we'll continue to manage cash flows accordingly. So next I'm going to ask Mark to do a bit of a walkthrough of some of the comparative results on regular revenue and operating costs as well as missions. So over to you, Mr. Debit.
Thank you, Mr. Credit. Thanks, Trevor.
Hello. Here you go.
Why don't we just switch? We'll switch debits and credits. So thank you, Trevor, and I've actually been looking forward to doing this. It's a different part of the financial presentation than I normally do, so if Trevor's part was more of the good cop and some of the good news that he talked about, I might be the bad cop for some of you, but I'm hoping not. I'm really going after your purses and your wallets here in some of this discussion, and all with good intention, just assuming we're all pulling the same way towards what Evangel as a church can do locally and around the world. So I wanted to look at some of the revenue streams a little more closely over the last 5 years and just show you some trending that we're seeing on giving, and certainly being able to come on staff as the administrator and see some of that firsthand over the last year. It was interesting to see that, so I wanted to share some of what I've seen. The slide that'll go up, the revenue comparison that's up there, if you want to look on page 8 of the annual report, there's lots of detail on that as well, and the center of that page has the same thing that's on the slide, especially for those of you maybe watching at home that want to look in the report. So the top 3 items on the middle table there, talking about revenues, we got general giving, we got missions giving, and we got capital and debt giving. On the general giving, if you look over the last 5 years, starting in 2017, it's certainly our biggest area of donations, from all of you. It started at about 1.34 million, so kind of just under 1.35. You see it was tracking around there for a couple years. In 2019, it hit a peak at just over 1.4 million. And then just as the effects of COVID partially hit in the 2020 fiscal year and then in 2021, you'll see it's worked its way down to last year being 1,286,000. So, not so much of a big drop year over year the last 2 years, but if you go back to 2019, we're down over $100,000 there. So that's just something, again, this year to date, starting in September, that of course passed what we're reporting here. We've seen at least what we were seeing last fall and maybe a little bit more. But really, if we want to get back to that 1.4 million, which of course the higher that number is, the more we can do with it, right? And the general giving subsidizes a lot of the other, whether it's missions or other ministry areas as well. So it's very important to have strong general giving. What I'd be asking for there, I mean, if you take me up on all 3 of these asks, I love you. If you take me up on just one, that's great. But the first one I'd ask would be just giving another 10%. Not 20 altogether if you're thinking tithe, just another 10% more in your general giving than you gave last year. If everyone did that, we'd be back to that 1.4 million. So I just wanted to put that idea in your head. For those of you that feel that that's what you can do or that you're called to do that, that's great. The second thing I want to look at is missions. So missions is very dear to a lot of us here. Evangel, we know, as a missions church. I'll get a little bit more into the praise side of what happened with missions this year next. But on the income and the donation side, if you look at the second line down on the slide or in the middle of the report, you'll see it's not so dramatic looking at 2020 to 2021. We're down about 100,000. But if you go all the way back to 2017, our missions giving was about 712,000, and last year was about 409,000. So if you're just looking at that, you track it over the last 5 years, it looks like we're losing the vision here for missions, right? And that's why I thought it was important that, if you looked at the report in detail or if you saw just that, I didn't want to leave you kind of discouraged there. I wanted to dig into that even a little more. So we're going to jump to the next slide, and then we'll come back to this in a minute. But if we jump to the next slide, which is going to be page 10, top of page 10 in the report as well. I just break down that missions trend, so that's 712,000 tracking down to 409. On this slide, you'll see about 2/3 of the way down the number grid, there's 5 or 6 lines of numbers, you'll see those same numbers. But we provide some more detail in there in terms of the different types of giving that comes through missions, just so you can kind of see what's changing within it. So back when it was 712,000, we would have had about 259,000 in general giving to missions, and then another 333 to what we'd say is designated missions. So that's money that you're not giving it just kind of to general missions to be allocated the way the missions committee would, but it's for a specific purpose. So you might say, hey, I want to sponsor sending Mark and Trevor to Africa. I'm going to put this money in there. I don't want them to come back, or I do, or whatever. So that kind of thing, right? Or like Pastor Mike would talk about today, the flood relief. There's a designated thing, that we're doing within more of our local community, right? So that number was like 333,000 back in 2017, and that's the one that if you track that across to last year, it was down to 141,000. So, part of that is COVID, so we don't have to own all of that kind of as a congregation. We couldn't do as much. We couldn't send Mark and Trevor to Africa, right? We still tried to do some projects and things like the Youth for Christ, the rolling outreach RV and things like that, but we were a little more limited. So that's the missions committee, the leadership team. We're all looking to increase the opportunity for some of these special projects this year, because I know the heart of this church, and when there are special projects like this flood relief, I know we get behind it in a big way. And the more we can bring projects to you, I know the more you'll stand behind it. I have faith in that. And the other part of the call would be not just the giving, but if all of you have projects or things that God puts on your heart, whether it's local or world missions, bring them to us. Make Pastor Irv busy. Make him work late nights dealing with all the requests for all the special missions projects that you can come up with, because that's what we want. So that's one way to kind of turn the missions number, right? The general missions giving, if you follow the top line of the slide, has actually been pretty consistent. It's some of that special project stuff. And then the other piece of it, you look into the middle of the slide or the middle group of numbers, would be more kind of on the estate or the end-of-life giving. And, this is a touchy subject. The last couple of years, we haven't had enough of you die and leave money to us, right? So I'm happy about that, don't get me wrong. But but as if you do have an opportunity to look into your estate planning and your will, and you do feel that God's calling, that you want to leave something to the church, it's very common that would actually be a missions kind of thing. Not that it has to be, it could be for anything, but or it could be just general. But a lot of times we have found from experience over the years that people will have a bit of an end-of-life plan. They want to leave something to missions. And that's what you'll see, what's happening, and not just in this last 5 years, but even before that, over my time. I remember a time when Don Hopkinson, he called me into the office and he said, I just had a really good day. And he said, look at this. And it was an unexpected, a lot of times we don't even know as a church that it's out there. And a lawyer had sent us a letter. This was left, and it was over $100,000 to missions. We didn't even know about. It was there. It was landed on the desk, and now we can do something with it, right? So that's another exciting thing, especially now for me, selfishly being on the inside, being able to take that and have those days. Like, send me those days. I don't want you to die, but eventually we all will, and that's just something that I wanted to put out there. We don't talk about it a lot, so this is an opportunity to do that. So that's just some pieces in missions that I wanted to lay in front of you. If we're going to switch back to the revenue again. The last one I wanted the third ask, I'll say, if I haven't got you yet, is capital and debt. So the debt side of it, I think Trevor's done a good job explaining. We had really good progress this year. I don't want to be greedy on that. But the capital side was actually an interesting shift. If you track the capital across, it's been, 200,000, 300,000 or so, sometimes a little less, over the last 5 years and even before that. If you look in 2021, the total number we're looking at, as Trevor described, is about 643,000. But of that, so much of that was the debt giving. We only had about 65,000 that was given towards capital. That's probably the lowest I've ever seen, and it does cause me some real concern. It's in my written report. If you haven't read it, have a look at that. That would probably be the one that's I would say is the most concerning for me just right now, because if that trend continues, we really can't maintain this facility and keep it up in the standard that it needs to be able to be functional and effective at $65,000 a year in capital giving. So I'm really, really asking, I mean, if you're a person that capital is the thing that gets you excited, like give me a call, like Andy and I will take you on the roof, you can stand on the leaky spot, and we'll take you into the parking lot, you can stand in the pooling water and motivate you, you know. Tell me what you need, and I'll help set you up to motivate you. But capital giving, really want to put the ask out there that that's something over and above general giving that we really do need some support. And often over the years, there's been some key individuals that have kind of shouldered the load, if I will, for others, you know, that have been really instrumental in keeping that part of the giving going. You know, that's not always going to be there. So I think it's a bit of more of a shift to all of us doing a part to keep the facility going and looking for that support. So those are the three things. Hopefully that's not too much of an ask, but I'm done with that part. I'll let you off the hook for now on that and shift you back to missions and talk about, you know, the exciting part of what we did. So we'll switch back to the missions slide. Talked about the revenue. On the spend side, we spent about $430,000 in missions this year, and the detail on that, one of the best pieces of the report, if you're going to look at one page, page 11. Page 11 identifies, you know, what did we do with the $430,000 that we had for missions over the last year? We break missions into kind of two buckets, I'd say. One is world missions. We spent about 55% of that amount, the $430,000, on world missions this year, and about 45% on more local or home missions. So world missions, you know, what does that look like? The page in the annual report gives you a lot of detail. But bottom line, we met all of our commitments. So a lot of that, we've got over 15 missionaries around the world that we support on a monthly basis. So they get the same check from us every month, and we've never missed a beat on that over the entire time that I've been involved here. And that's not the case. I mean, those of you that are involved with other churches or have been missionaries, you know, that's something that I think this church should be proud of. And it goes the same with our local support. When we commit to it, we do everything possible, you know, to the last dollar that's sitting there, we'll put it towards those commitments to make sure that that work can be done. Once we commit to it, we're your partner, right? Some special projects that were done on world missions this year, again, less than might be normal. We didn't have all the mission trips, but we did manage to send Irv Cordes. He's hopefully watching right now in Guatemala, so we're getting back into the system, and that's great. Last year we did we sent with Irv a container down to Guatemala, and we also had a container went to Africa as well. Supplies and materials went there, so that was some of the world mission side. On the home mission side, we've got about 10 local organizations that we support. Awesome organizations like Hope Outreach, Freedom's Door, Teen Challenge, those kind of things that you hear about quite a bit. And we're going to keep doing that. We did, like I mentioned, the special project with Youth for Christ. That's been a great partnership for us. And Teen Challenge as well. We did some extra work with them this last year. And then outside of that, we also have this whole other area of home missions and outreach with our ESL ministries. So that's something that, you know, you don't even see all the numbers on the books because a lot of it is a lot of you volunteering and helping. And Debbie does such a great job on staff of running that whole ministry. And that's part of our firm commitment and growing commitment to make Evangel an international church. Like, that is what we're all about. You're going to see more of that. And that's something that was started many years ago with the ESL, and that's going to continue. And then probably my favorite part now, being more in the office on the day-to-day, what I get to experience that not all of you get to see is all the benevolent stuff that we do. And it's just awesome. And Pastor Irv would be the center, the vortex of all of that. And like I say, bring him stuff, you know, keep him busy in that. I love to see him just running around, donating cars, helping people. You know, Andy as well on staff, our facility manager, helping people move. Tireless efforts there. People that are there. Nobody else is there to help them. Andy gets in his truck and goes and helps them, right? So it's awesome. So anyways, for me, that's been powerful to see that play out. And to see all of you kind of get involved as well. We've got like extended missions groups throughout the church. We've got the Care and Share ladies that are there every week. We've got community outreach teams that are going out on the streets. And we've got the assignment team that, again, is bringing us people in need. And it could be as simple as the free store. Somebody just needs a bag of groceries, or it could be something more, you know, and it's just such a privilege to be a part of that. So. All right, we'll take a breath. We'll move on to something just a little bit more about capital. So we'll go to the next slide. Final slide for me here, and then Trevor is going to kind of wrap it up with some budget discussion. But if I'm going to ask you for some capital, I wanted to talk to you a little bit about what we did over the last year in the area of capital and what we're planning to do over the next year. Last year, we spent the top part of the slide, and again, this is page 13 of the annual report. We spent about $102,000, which is probably on the lower end of what we typically will have done as a church. So capital would be things that are more longer-term improvements or upgrades, right? So in the facility, we spent about $43,000. Some things we did there. Biggest part of that was paving. I don't know if the paving will ever be done. It seems like we finished one part and then another part sinks or does something weird. We did some bathroom renos in the bathrooms for KCS. The Kids Corner Daycare, we spent about $12,000 there on recarpeted some of the areas there that were overdue for that for sure. Multimedia area, maybe some of you haven't even noticed, but we kind of built a whole sound room to assist with the live streaming and make that work better right in the back top of the sanctuary here. Blends right in, you can hardly see the thing, but that was another project we did this year. So that was about $102,000. Going into next year, we're looking for giving and capital giving, you know, to be about $150,000, and we'd be looking to spend about $180,000. So that difference would be subsidized by our general giving. And in the 180, some of the bigger projects we're looking to do some improvements around the facility with security and cameras and the alarm system, just kind of upgrading that, making sure it's what it should be, and making some improvements with some of the doors and wheelchair access, making sure our building is as accessible as possible. And the roof, like I say, the roof is always an ongoing thing, so we got about $20,000 we're looking to deal with a section of the roof. Had an interesting, you know, kind of confirmation that we had a section that needed to be done with the recent storms. Had some good water coming through there, so we've definitely got some work we can do there and ongoing. And then paving, so another section of the lot over by the heritage room and the daycare area at KCS, about $50,000 there. On the inside, within the sanctuary, we're looking to add some in-ear monitors to improve the worship experience for our worship bands and our musicians. And we've actually done some work as well, invested in, there's a loft area. It's kind of a scary place if you've ever been there when all the teenagers are there. But within the youth room, if you go up into the loft area, we made some improvements there and upgraded that and added some old school, I think, Pac-Man video games and a few things just to keep the kids engaged there. So it's part of our commitment there. So yeah, so that's a bit of a summary of that. And like I say, if you're ever interested in more of that, come see Andy and I, and we'll get you, either put you to work or we'll help you with your checkbook. So either way. Thanks so much.
Thanks, Mark. It's a great facility. If you haven't had a chance to tour some of the hallways and areas of where other parts of ministry take place, do encourage you to drop by the church and see that, see your money at work. So I'm going to do two parts here. The first part, I'm going to talk a bit about the financial results relative to last year's budget to give you a bit of sense of where we landed. And then I'll finish off with adding on a budget column, and we'll talk a bit about where the budget for this coming year lands relative to our previous year's results. So a lot of information to share here, so I will do my best to keep you awake and get you out in time for the restaurant lunch rush. So first off, in terms of how the 2020-2021 year results were relative to the planned budget, I've prepared this sort of condensed version of the format of the income statement, which you'll find on pages 14 and 15 of the annual report. You know, I must say that when we were preparing this budget for this past year, 14 months ago, we were still expecting some recovery from COVID. There was an expectation of this greater return to what we would call normal operations. However, the economic impact of the pandemic persisted. But however, you know, God is good. we look back and, we were really, if you talk about man, the flesh was nervous about how the year would progress. And we did have to, we talked at the board and, it's just that really God's in control. And you see that in the results. God is good. And the people of Evangel, you in the congregation, were faithful in support during a very difficult season. So for example, let's talk about how the results turned out. In terms of overall revenues, when we saw general giving was actually $12,000 higher than we had budgeted, and we were not expecting that as the pandemic unfolded. There was a lot of uncertainty of what might happen to giving. But as you can imagine, when COVID hit and facility lockdown and restrictions were in place, the ability to use the facility for the community and the community revenue-based opportunities there did drop. So we did see a reduction in facility and other income relative to our budget, and that's understandable. We also, as Mark pointed out, saw the reduction in mission giving, and so Mark's already explained what took place there. And then we also saw a reduction in what we call our ministry revenues. So that was down about $34,000. That generally represents fee-based events and sometimes the midweek giving. So without some of the midweek services, opportunity to give there was diminished. But also many of sort of the youth events that were you would pay registration fees for and such, those didn't take place, so that revenue was down. But so was the corresponding expense, which we'll see in a little bit. So overall, total operating revenues was down relative to budget. When it comes to expenses, we also were doing our best to constrain our spending wherever possible. So overall, we saw the personnel costs and the general office and administration costs were actually up year over year. While that includes the office cost of about $35,000 increase and personnel costs being over budget by about $50,000, you can imagine that when we prepared the budget, we didn't anticipate we had to pivot and provide more of a digital offering when it comes to how we present our worship service. So we had to obviously make a change in how we staffed the organization to be able to provide ministry opportunity and present the gospel over live streaming. So we did bring on staff to help with that, as it does require specialized skill. So that was a change in the actuals relative to what we had planned in our budget. But as we talked about the excess cash balances that we had, we were also to save $10,000 in interest costs. So that was also a positive cost savings throughout the total general and staff expense line. In addition to that, I mentioned that ministry costs were also under budget, so we spend less when less money comes in when it comes to some of those ministry areas. Those are generally an in and out type category, as well as missions is an in and out category. So we still subsidized mission spending by about $20,000 from general giving. And then lastly, both from a revenue and expense area, one of the major changes that took place was Kids Corner Daycare. A significant community need for childcare throughout the pandemic. Government grants assisting with opportunities to provide a greater array of childcare in our community allowed for increased revenue to take place and then the increased expenses to staff the daycare accordingly. So that's been a huge positive win from a community ministry opportunity to serve the community in another way. So that saw an increase in revenue and expenses accordingly. And we expect to see that continue into the budget year, as we'll see in a moment. So overall, this resulted in a net operating loss of about $3,300 for this entire fiscal year, which is quite frankly amazing considering we're talking about a $2.6 million revenue budget, and we resulted in a $3,300 deficit. So that's very positive considering the uncertain time that we came through and are still in. Next, we move on to overall capital debt and reduction. Mark did a great job summarizing what took place in capital, and we talked a bit about debt reduction. So overall, this net capital shortfall of $37,000 was subsidized by general, and that's just the nature of how the funding works out. So overall, for the entire financial year, we result in a net loss of $40,000 relative to a planned budgeted surplus of $31,000. So that was a $70,000 swing that, in light of a very uncertain time, we're quite frankly pleased that it landed where it did, given all that we went through. So overall, the most notable point here is just that, that debt reduction definitely made a significant impact to the debt giving, and the debt reduction made a significant impact to our results. But overall, we're going to talk a bit more about the budget and how it relates to how the results were for this past year. So the next slide. I got to move to another piece of paper. There's so much to say here, so I'll do my best to get us through in 2 minutes or less. All right. First off, I would say, just to give a bit of background and context, the assumptions that we rely on or use in the preparation of the budget for this coming year were pretty significant. One is that we expect that there'll be increased relaxation of the COVID restrictions and a continuation of return to, the same kinds of activities and use of our facility as we've enjoyed in the past. That's a base assumption that we have. Another key assumption is that, we are in a new season of our life of our church. We have what we'd say anticipated some faith of growth in general giving, and Pastor Mike talked about that our plan is to see growth in depth and growth in numbers and growth in our faith throughout this time. So the budget is intended to reflect that. We also have a base assumption there'll be some increased youth activities due to the reduction of restrictions, and also the continued high demand for childcare, which affects Kids Corner daycare. So what does this result in? Well, first off, when it comes to the revenue section of the budget, it'd be about a 2.5% increase in general giving is what we've proposed would take place. We also would see facility use income return to more of the pre-pandemic levels. And while we already have some existing bookings of community use for our facility, so that number is expected to come to fruition. We also would expect, thanks to Mark's presentation, a return to some missions giving and focus on missions, and accordingly increased spending on missions as well. And another area of results that we would see is that we would expect ministries giving also to return to pre-pandemic levels, which includes midweek events and the youth sort of pay-as-you-go type events. So that would generate additional revenue. And then lastly, the daycare, similar to the current year actuals, minus some maybe COVID subsidies that were received, we would still expect there would be ongoing support with the government grants as well. So when it comes to our operating expenses, these assumptions have resulted in us holding personnel, office admin, and other expenses stable. Mostly, there's expected to be a nominal increase for planned wage increases for staff who work very hard. And, but we are also prudent and know that we need to wait and see how sort of mid-year results play out, and whether or not we want to be good stewards and want to make sure that it's fiscally responsible to increase wages as according to our plan. And so we will do mid-year reviews of our results, and that's part of the committee's commitment. Also, we expect the remainder of expense categories, which are ministries, missions, and daycare, that they'll also be adjusted to mirror the giving results throughout the year. So these are areas that are somewhat within our control to reduce spend or increase spend depending on corresponding giving in those categories. So they are somewhat controllable. And overall, as a result of all those categories, we would look at a net operating surplus in our budget of $36,500. And that is a noticeable change from the current year results. Lastly, and Mark's touched quite a bit on the capital, but as you follow through the rest of this slide, heading down, we would see a net effect of a $30,000 shortfall in the capital and debt reduction category, which would then be subsidized by our operating surplus, which would result in a net gain of $6,500 that is planned in the budget. So one thing I want to touch on, and we've talked about this in past presentations as well, and it's an ongoing discussion at the board and the finance committee, is that we operate fairly close to sort of a break even. And this is, again, a very unusual budget year. So now is probably not the time for us to kind of make some major leaps in terms of our budget. So what I'd say is that we do have plans as a board to develop longer range plans to consider how capital reserves could be developed going forward, and to maximize opportunities, for example, to maximize the value of this great facility and land for kingdom work. And that requires multi-year plans and complex planning. So that is something that is on the roadmap for items for the board to consider over the next year. So again, the key to note here is that we are in a new season with a new lead pastor and never before experienced pandemic economic recovery that we don't yet know how that will play out. So we feel this is a balanced budget of faith, optimism, and conservatism all at the same time. So we do know and trust God in the preparation of the budget. We pray over this process diligently, and for that God's in control of the life of Evangel Church, and I think the budget reflects that. The finance committee and the board is committed to balancing fiscal responsibility while also meeting the needs of our community, balancing people and things, facility, capital, and people. That is what we value, all of that. So that would wrap up my presentation of the financial results and the budget. And I think at this time we would be moving into question and answer period. So if there are some questions, turn it back over to Pastor Mike as our chair.
Thank you. I think we're on here. May have to turn it up a little hotter. That was great. Thank you so much, gentlemen. We are going to open it up to some questions in front of you, not for the balcony, but in front of you on the floor. We have two mics. Those are on and available. If you have any questions regarding the budget proposed, the conversation that we just had, now is your time to come forward. I'm going to check my phone as well because we do have an online audience, and I know that as things come up, I'll be sent a text. So, watching. Okay, so state your name, sir.
Good afternoon. I'm Darren Scuffy. Thank you all. I just want to say to Mark and Trevor especially, on behalf of so many that know you and have fellowship with you and shared times with you, thank you for your service to Evangel. It's just really encouraging to see. We all have strengths, we all have giftings and skills, and to see you guys joyfully do this, even though it is sometimes at a cost, it really encourages my heart. So that's the one thing. But my one question, being part of Evangel for so many years, the report really takes a great snapshot of what we do out in the community. But I'm actually kind of curious, what does the facility do when you bring in people, when you talk about raising revenue as a piece of land and an actual building? I really don't have a good snapshot as to what we bring in for the community. Like, how's the facility being used? And if anybody needs me to run a mic, I can be there too.
Yeah, so
Go ahead, Mark, you can speak to it, but I'm just going to jump in here. This facility is something I've never seen before. When I've been at multiple different churches, some of you have as well. Often the facility sits empty during the week or sits empty different times of the week. This is not the case here at Evangel. Our building gets used 6 to 7 days a week. If it could be, it'd be used 8 times a week. And Mark can speak to some of the details of that, but I think it's a beautiful thing.
yeah, like some of the exciting, it's really exciting to deal with it. And Jacqueline, our new front reception and kind of coordinator of bookings for the facility, if you've ever had the privilege of dealing with her, done an awesome job stepping into Susanna's role. Big shoes to fill there. And she's, working with her. I mean, obviously we both started over the pandemic, so that the use wasn't the same, a year ago as it's looking this year. So we're really seeing the difference. But like the partnerships, the number one for me that's exciting always has been for, being a part of this is the KCS partnership, right? That's a huge use, and I know that's fairly obvious, but it has to be said. I mean, that's an important part of how our facility is used and why the size of it exists, and so that's exciting. But then it's other organizations, right? It's anything from like the school district. We're here for graduations and different ceremonies that the elementary, secondary schools will have. Like the nursing program, I think they do their Rose graduation here. They're looking to rebook that. So we're a real source for the community to be able to have a facility that's got really good lighting, sound, and setup to be able to have community events here. Mission Dance has been another exciting partner, just something else, diversity in the use of our facility. So yeah, it's very exciting. I mean, just when you think you've kind of heard everything, I mean, we've got a partnership that I'm excited about. It's been growing with Okanagan College, just being kind of relatively a neighbor of ours over on Kelowna. They use some of our parking lot, and we've been in discussions with them about increasing use for them to be able to, or host them to be able to write exams and things like that, or overflow use for them. So really proud of that part of the partnership, and I think I'm not going to take the credit as being on the front line of it. I'm usually the guy maybe in the background that's making can we even do this, or how do we shift things around and make it work? It's a little bit like Tetris, you move people here, and if I take this over here and move them in another room, we can fit them here. But Jacqueline deals with that on the front line. She does a great job because it's complicated. You got different users coming in at different times and trying to balance that with our ministries and things that are ongoing. So if any of you have been negatively impacted by being moved around a little bit, appreciate your tolerance and patience for that, because we're trying to be, that's an outreach as well. I think it's very important that when people call and say, hey, can we use your building for a meeting, like AA is another important one that I value. We're here. They've got to go somewhere, and this is a safe place, and we try and make it affordable and reasonable. So anyways, that gives you a few ideas anyways.
One of my favorite nights of the week is Friday night. You want to know why? Because I have to come in the office entrance doors through a plume of smoke. Because out there becomes a smoke pit. Because we run here an incredible program called Celebrate Recovery. And God is doing incredible work on Friday night here at Celebrate Recovery with the team. It is a multi-denominational, a team effort approach, and that's Friday nights, and God is doing some wonderful things there. Again, one of the things that our facility is used for. Another question? Yeah, just state your name.
My name's Morgan.
Hello, Morgan. Morgan
Morning.
Lockhart.
Yes, I've got a
Good to
question
see
for
you.
Mark.
Sure.
Referencing the revenue summary on page 8, you had mentioned that $65,000 figure for capital for 2001, whereas the rest of that $643,000 figure was for debt.
Right.
I'm just wondering if you can clarify that figure as to why, like, you're looking for more capital giving. Can those figures come from the general giving, or does it need to be specifically allocated to capital projects to be used for capital?
Sure. Yeah, like it definitely can, and really, I guess at the bottom line, everything does come from the general fund or general giving if we don't have the designated giving for it. I guess the reality with that, though, is by the time we take the current general giving of about 1.3 that we have, you know, and pay salaries and admin and all these other costs, subsidize other ministries, how much is left to subsidize that capital, right? And I guess my concern would be at 65,000 in designated giving to capital. If we're running through 150,000 a year, or call it 160 for easy math, you know, we're taking 100,000 a year out of the general towards it, and that would be like on a long-term basis. You know, that's going to run us back into debt situations and using our line of credit. And I'm not necessarily averse to that if it makes sense for long-term investment, but you know, that's again, the motivation would be if we can pay for it as we go. I think that's, you know, that's a better place to start.
And to follow up with that, you had just mentioned the leaky roof, and so I guess putting it back to like the board and the staff, what could be done to better communicate the needs to the congregation so that we can then give to projects like that?
Well, so this is a part of it today, obviously, and I think for me, you know, Trevor and I have talked about, and certainly with Pastor Mike, about maybe more of even an ongoing dialogue about, you know, whether it's through like the emails or video updates. Now that I've kind of been broken into this online video thing that some of you might have seen, you know, I kind of liked it. So
And you did fantastic.
Mike was jumping around behind the camera for those of you that couldn't see that. But yeah, I think just more ongoing communication. I think the thing the last couple of years too that we haven't had, and for good reasons, through going through COVID and everything else, is we've often run, for those of you that have been around long enough, we've often run like capital campaigns where we'll bring to the congregation a 2 or 3 year plan, you know, multifaceted, you know, improvements to the facility and upgrades. And, you know, I'm not saying that anything like that is right on the books right now, but that's another way that in the past we've kind of dealt with just communicating, you know, kind of a bigger scope than 1 year at a time and looking for some support. I think what Trevor and I would be trying to express even today as well, though, is that rather than bringing projects, you know, here's $1 million project over 3 years, we're looking for support, we'd like to work towards building up more capital reserves, contingency funds for it, so that we can still communicate what we're doing, but be more proactive, being able to actually get ahead of it a little bit, and be able to have savings and reserves put aside, because we know this stuff is going to keep coming around, and you know, it's cyclical, right? So,
Thank you.
thanks, Morgan.
Yeah. Let me just add to that. We don't know what we don't know. And so it's really important for us to get the communication right. I look at our missions, and this is what, I'll tell you what keeps me up at night, is when I look at that vision, the missions, and I look at the faithful giving. But there's another generation, there's another group of people that are coming up that have to catch that vision to continue to give to it. And so we need to communicate our missions. And so right now, Irv is on the ground in Guatemala. He'll be coming back with a report. We're planning on and hoping to, throughout the year, be able to give good, clear missions updates. Not just a missions month once a year, but good, clear missions updates throughout the year. That includes as well as capital. We need to know. We need to get Mark out on the roof with his slicker hat on and point to the hole in the roof. You know, you don't know what you don't know, and so we're actively working on ways to make sure that you know. And so that's part of the plan. So, any other questions as it relates to the budget as presented? Let me just check. Okay, so I'm looking around. I don't see any other questions. Thank you so much for your questions. I'd like to thank Trevor and Mark for their hard work. And once again, can we give them a clap? I do feel like the questions have been answered, and we had ample opportunity. and I'd like to get to lunch, as I said in the sermon. I am hungry. So I would like to make a motion to accept these financial reports as presented. Can I have a mover? One mover in the front, a seconder? Great. All those in favor? Motion carried. There it is.
Thank you.
Okay, the next order of business, I would like to make a motion to appoint the independent accountants for our annual review engagement. That being, and these guys just love to have big, long names, don't they? Kemp Harvey Hent Ward Incorporated for our fiscal 2022 financial review. I'm looking for a mover. We have a mover, a seconder. All those in favor? Motion carried. Great. And last on our agenda, I'd like to let you know that we have this booklet. If you haven't already, but I'm expecting that you have read it. But in this booklet, you're going to see some ministry reports found in that AGM booklet. And to close today, I'd just like to read my AGM report. So, I'll try and be as brief as possible. I can hear your tummies rumbling. So on page 34 of your AGM booklet, and I'll close with this. What an eventful first season, church. An eventful first season of ministry leading at Evangel Church as your pastor. It was exciting to see the turnout throughout our pastoral discernment process and how our church has pulled together in the steps involved, and I truly mean that. Following the congregational vote, I felt a strong mandate from our membership to lead into the future. And I truly believe that good days are ahead for Evangel. And I'm aware that with change comes challenge. But challenge is what God wants for us. It is healthy to be challenged. Challenge confronts us and helps us look deeply at things we've often taken for granted or instinctively repeated. We have been challenged to meet financial obligations, as you've heard, and I just look at that missions giving and go, thank God. We've been challenged to meet financial obligations during this pandemic and pastoral change. We have been challenged to find ways of leading people to Jesus during a season where the words social and distancing have made their way into our everyday vocabulary. We've been challenged to disciple and communicate the gospel of Jesus in a climate where many of our congregation are watching online from home. However, Evangel has risen to these challenges. This year, financially, we have met our obligations, as we've stated. Praise God. We have championed ministries and missions. We've launched new initiatives like Church Camp in the summer and have led people in baptism, salvation, and baby dedications with marriages as well as funerals. As a staff, we've had to innovate, as you can imagine. We've had to think through many new ways of doing ministry. Even as I think about Sunday mornings, right? They have a new rhythm. We now interact with multiple video cameras, seeing them up in the balcony, in front, and to my right. Live streaming online, where sound, lighting, music, and the word all need to be in sync to communicate the gospel broadly. These are not bad things, but these are changes. And they're challenges. The church, church, we are meeting and conquering the challenges that we face with the Holy Spirit as our guide. Over the last few months, our Evangel staff has been a focus for me personally. My heart for our staff can be summed up in two words: team and health. My desire is for a thriving staff team that is healthy in a variety of ways. The best way for me to assess where we are as a staff is to listen. So, to do this well, I've gathered our staff for individual staff reviews, each review lasting for over an hour. And thank you, Mark, for helping with that. What a pleasure this has been to learn history. There's lots of it. We have a deep, deep history here. Gain understanding of the present and be able to chart a preferred future. Here are just a few highlights throughout our season. One, our church board. It has been a joy for me to work with such dedicated women and men. We have a strong and healthy church board, and it just got stronger today. This October, we had an incredibly well-attended welcome to church party with around 80 people attending. This was our first, can you believe it? Our first since reopening during COVID. It was encouraging to welcome new people into the life of our church. And meet with pastors and board and staff. Farewell Sunday, let's not forget about that. What a powerful Sunday. Saying goodbye to Pastor Will and Wendy as our pastors, but they're still part of our church. And inviting our district superintendent, Ken Russell, to pray over myself and my wife as new leadership. There was a passing of the baton that was extremely meaningful to me. Sunday Morning Connect team, Castina, has been spearheading this. We've had over 40 people sign up to serve. This includes ushers, greeters. The cafe is open. Can I get an amen? The info desk, first impressions. Again, church camp was an incredible blessing, and we will only see that continue as we go forward, including baptisms and salvations. New Sunday sermon series has been a blessing to myself, and I know to many others, reading through the Gospel of John. Staff meetings, devotional time, working with Mark Faubert.
Poor guy.
I just want to point out that Mark has been an incredible guide for me during this season. It's been a treasure, really. And his expertise and love for the church, and I want to underscore that. His expertise, he comes expertly loaded with lots of things to do and see and expertise, but he also comes in friendship, and he has a passion for this church. So thanks Mark, for that on a daily basis, even though he's only part-time. Thank you to your wife, Colleen. Where are you? Legacy Builders, Pastor Gordon Linna, they've been new on this year. They're sitting right at the front, and that is their personality. They have been championing me, your pastor. They've been pushing lots of encouragement my way, and that has made such a huge impact. I had the opportunity to attend Legacy Builders in the first few weeks after becoming your lead pastor, and together Castina and I had the opportunity to field questions and to share vision, and we have an amazing group of seniors here. Preteen ministry has been fantastic. We have seen it grow both in size and vision. And I want to tell you, if you go out to our youth ministry, Pastor Josh and Nicole have done a fantastic job. Preteens, for some reason, it's just taken off. They just tell their buddies. And so we went pre-pandemic, we were around 40 kids, and now we're up around 80. And so it's pretty exciting to see it grow during another pandemic year. So thank you to Pastor Josh and Nicole. They've had just incredible, wonderful leadership. Castina and I love doing ministry together. You'll see that reflected on Sunday mornings. And we've had this opportunity here at Evangel. So she has led in so many ways, and you can see that throughout the report. And Castina says this: if you ever see me running around on Sunday morning, I'm either chasing after one of our 4 children or making sure our volunteers have everything they need. I also host Sunday mornings, occasionally lead worship alongside Pastor Mike, making myself available to minister and pray with people. My heart and passion is that everyone, from whatever age, whatever stage of life, is cared for and connected into community at our church. Thank you, Evangel. You have been dedicated in prayer, financial support, and love. This, from me, has been a season filled with hope, and we will meet the challenges head on. We will continue to overcome as the Spirit enables us. And I want to leave you with this. John 16:33 says this: I have told you these things so that in me you may have peace. In this world, you're going to have trouble, but take heart. I've overcome the world. God bless you, Pastor Mike and Castina. Well, that's it. And so for the report that I've just given you, and for the annual written reports in your AGM package, the blue one, I would like to present our last motion of the day. To accept these reports as prepared, can I have a mover? We have a mover, a seconder. All those in favor? Motion carried. I want to thank you so much for your time today, making yourself available, and I look forward to a fruitful year ahead. Meeting adjourned. God bless you.